Hello, this is Chris, and I'm here for another Artwork Wednesday. Normally on these Artwork Wednesdays, what I do is I, have some sort of... Well, the first one, I guess, was a look into our artwork process. Last week was, had some reveals in it. In this one, I want to go back to process a bit. I've been getting a lot of questions about specifically how we use Blender 2.9, which is if you don't know, it's a 3D animation software tool that is open source, meaning that it is free and you can change the code if you'd like. So, open source is pretty cool. I like it a lot. I've been using Blender for about 11 years at this point, and I guess going on 12. So I really like Blender a lot, but I was really excited to see that Blender added a new set of tools that it calls Grease Pencil, which is a pretty fully featured 2D animation suite. So, having it along with, the 3D tools that you have with that you've always had with Blender has been really awesome. So I wanted to show a breakdown of how we've made a few of our characters in the game, a few of our maybe even more complicated characters. And I wanted to start off with, rewind. I wanted to start off with how we made a classic Little Nemo feature, the walking bed. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the walking bed, I actually put the bed in the last Sunday Funnies, and I'm going to put it in this update as well, just for reference. But the walking bed is a famous strip from 1908 where Flip appears in Nemo's room and says, basically like the bed starts growing legs and gallops out of the house and takes Nemo and Flip on a adventure around Nemo's town. And we're going to use it in a similar way in our game. This is going to be a scene from the beginning of the game, and Peony will be the one to get Nemo and go to Slumberland. And usually it's like, hey, we want you to come be the princess's playmate. Here, obviously, we're going to have it be a little more of an emergency. That's why Nemo brings his wooden sword. He wants to show how brave he is and that he's prepared for the dangers of Slumberland, unlike in the comic where he usually ends the comic by screaming for his parents. But, Peony says, like, hey, you're needed in Slumberland. You're the only one who can help us. And, or something to that effect. We're still going to work it out with a narrative designer. But, the bed is going to grow legs just like before. And just like in McKay's comic, it's actually going to be, as you can see, it's a little more wild. It's a little more like a bucking bronco than a, if you see other adaptations like the movie, the bed usually goes at like a pleasant trot. And what we really want is for the bed to be more like in the comic. In the comic, McKay is pretty adamant that the bed is going very fast and is bucking around a lot. And, the bed is really cool because it's an example of two things with Winsor McCay. One is him using, photo references like Edward Muybridge's postcards about the movement of animals. And if you don't know who Muybridge is, I'll include a link that I did to a write-up of this process. But Muybridge was a photographer who took pictures of animals in motion, animals and people. And they became very popular, these cards with these images on them. And they were a popular reference for artists, including, we think, Winsor McCay, because so much of his art seems to directly reference, poses that were in Muybridge. And then in another thing that you see in the Walking Bed comic is that McCay is using those references, but he's applying them to a real world creature, in this case Nemo's bed. And what's cool about that is that a lot of people said to Winsor McCay, well, you must be tracing, you can't be that good. And he actually was that good and would often try to prove people wrong by drawing things that didn't really exist in motion, like walking beds and dinosaurs and other monsters. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is I want to show off our walking bed. So here's the walking bed in Blender, and pardon the dust. I actually was doing a previous recording of this and I discovered something was amiss, so I had to go fix it. But here is the walking bed, and here is its motion. Now, we're probably going to smooth this animation out just for production time. We kept it to a 8-frame run cycle, but we're probably going to smooth it out a little bit and add some more frames just so it reads a little cleaner. But for a first pass video, we thought it was pretty good. So basically what we did was, and let me go, turn the bed back on. So this asset in particular is one that I can use to show the usefulness of Blender for a process like this. And so here I have the bed itself, and I actually have a 3D model of the bed in both legged and non-legged versions. So that way we can keep the bed consistent among all animations where it's included. Like here with Nemo, when he's walking, when he's falling out of bed, we actually have just a standard bed model. And then we also have this bed model that we use as an underlay for when we are doing animations like the walking bed, or when we are doing things like, let me open this up, this piece of concept art, which is actually our first piece of concept art for the game. Why are you zooming out? And so the concept art here is actually, again, derived from this model, and so are all of the other buildings. So we modeled this in Blender and then painted over it in Adobe Photoshop. But yeah, so that's the same walking bed as the one in this one, actually. Is that the same pose? No, that's not that pose. But what I did with this is we animated the walking bed, and you're going to see some parts where the one leg wigs out a little bit. That leg was giving me problems for some reason. The rigging wasn't working quite right. But we put this together to get a nice underlay so that we didn't have to totally interpret this, the spindly legs totally from scratch. And then I proceeded from there to... No, I did not just oh, and then it's done. No. What I did is I proceeded from there to... First, I actually worked on the bed itself. And then I'm going to go into front view. So I just did the lines and then, traced over that. I had Nemo and Peony be totally separate. And, okay, Nemo's foot is still active. And I even had the bed sheet be totally separate. And here you can see where, I used some creative license with what the Blender rig was giving me, again, because it was just so... We didn't want to make a full, carefully made rig because we wouldn't be using the 3D model for this. We just wanted to have it be an underlay for 2D animation. So that's actually where you get, you can see some differences there. But the result is much smoother and a lot easier to read. It has better silhouettes than what you get with the rigged model. And then, of course, we filled it. There it goes. And then we proceeded to work on Nemo and Peony. So because Nemo and Peony are physically reacting to the bed, we're using them almost as a follow through. If you're familiar with the principles of animation, one of the principles is follow through. So Nemo and Peony, I'm treating them almost like they have their own follow through, but I'm treating them as extensions of the bed. So they're reacting physically to it the whole time. So, as it's dropping, they are dropping and bouncing accordingly. Same thing with the sheet. And then, as the bed goes up, they are going up and reacting. So you have that motion. So once I had that rough out, with these, once I figured out the motion with the roughs, then I moved on to obviously creating. So what I've been doing actually is putting the outer lines and inner lines on 2 different layers. If you're familiar with Winsor McCay's work at all, or especially if you've ever read John Canamaker's biography of Winsor McCay, you might know that what McCay had was considered the Art Nouveau line, and I think that's a phrase that Canamaker created himself. But basically, it's an aspect of the style of artwork that McCay did, which was called Art Nouveau. And Art Nouveau pieces tend to have a very thick outer line and very fine inner lines. So what I typically do is I have the outer lines on a separate layer, because if I needed to, what I could do is go down here and change their stroke thickness. So if I decide that maybe the strokes themselves are too thin or too fat, I can go and edit the stroke thickness. And of course, it's not showing me. Oh, that's because I'm editing it on inner line for some reason. See, I can change this. If I discover that a sprite is not reading that well as having a great outer line, I can always go and change it. But this one actually works pretty well. And then, of course, I do the inner lines, and I'm turning them on, but obviously this is a process of lots and lots and lots and lots of drawing. And then, finally do my character fills. Now, one thing that you are going to see is that there is this other layer called Nemo's foot. And that's because at one point stuff starts getting into the foreground over things. So I wanted to have as non-destructive a version of this as possible. So I actually made a separate layer for foreground objects. So yeah, see? When Nemo's foot intersects in front. That way I can have this motion happening and not mess with like the peony character. So the character drawing. So that is how we did the walking bed. As you can see, oh, that's interesting, where everything lines up in 3 dimensions. I did not know that. But so that's how we did the walking bed. I basically did the bed first as a 3D model, traced over it, colored it, and then did the characters in rough to get their motion down, and then cleaned them up, obviously with their own outer inner lines and coloring. In the last few minutes of this, I thought that I would also show. No, I don't want to save. Let me also show you a character that is near and dear to my heart, which is Bosco the Dragon. And where are you, Bosco? Which one is the best Bosco? Let's go with this rendered one. So Bosco is a lot of fun. He was a character that we've really wanted to include because he is just like he's a big dog, basically. Or at least that's how we think about him. But, he's been a lot of fun to work with. He probably took up most of our time. And let's turn on Bosco Roughs, turn off Bosco Fill. And, architecture color, architecture lines off. So we started with Bosco, there we go. And then I'll turn off smoke. So we started with another rough. And so Bosco took me about 3 weeks. And he's, I think, about 5 seconds of animation. But we wanted Bosco to fly in. And there's going to be this other character, Misto. And she is a character from the comics. We wanted to reinterpret her and she's on the like who you will meet header on the Kickstarter. So Misto, she's a wizard, and she does a few different things in the comic, but we wanted to redesign her a little bit. Just to make Slumberland a little more inclusive than what McKay had it be. So the idea is that you're going to come to places in levels and meet Misto, and she's going to be scouting locations for the Dragon Trolley. And the Dragon Trolley is basically going to function as a quick travel system. Now, obviously some of this is early in development and subject to change, so FYI. Game developers are better off when they clarify those things, so nobody thinks we're promising things. But the idea behind Bosco and Misto is that Misto basically is like she opens up checkpoints for you, and Bosco is going to be your quick travel between checkpoints. He's your subway. If you've played Hollow Knight, he's the stag station. And again, we sketched everything out in rough. I made a setting. I wanted to have a nice wide architectural, like a consistent architecture to these, so that it does feel kind of like, when you find one of these arches, you'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, the quick travel station, fantastic. Especially, again, for those speedrunners who like being able to like go quickly to different areas of the map. So then again, we just roughed it out. So that's why you can see Misto blink in and out of existence here, because we wanted to rough out, Bosco's leg as he comes in. And then, so this timing took a little bit of working on, but we have Bosco come in. He kind of curls up like a dog does when it's about to lay down, and then I keep calling it because it's a 3D model, or it's a model, but Bosco's a he. So he lifts himself up and then plops down and curls up a little bit, and then we just had him lying there for a second or two. And if you've been following us on Twitter, you will have seen one of Adrian, one of our designers, said to me on Twitter, man, it's a living energy you've given all these citizens of Slumberland. And it's kind of true. Bosco's driver especially, I've always kind of imagined him as like only 3 more years till he gets his pension kind of guy. But basically what happens is Bosco, big lovable creature he is, just kind of lies down and looks at the cool little kid that's there, and smiles. He's very friendly, and then the guy says, wait, you're supposed to open your mouth. And the first version of this had him give Bosco a little whap on the head, which makes, for the anticipation for when Bosco opens his mouth that has the throne inside, he would puff up and then blow out some smoke, and then that would, we'd have a little smear frame, and then that would be where you get the throne that is in the comic. Because if you're familiar with Bosco in the comic, he's this like transport that has a throne in his mouth, and the princess and Nemo ride around Slumberland on him. So let me turn back on our architecture. I don't have Misto in this because she's in her own file because I want to do her own animation apart from Bosco right now. But turning everything on, we were a little worried about Bosco getting a whap on the head, so I'm going to turn off our roughs, and then I'm just going to turn smoke on. We were worried about Bosco getting a whap on the head, so we changed it. And then, so what's going to happen here is we're going to have this sprite in front of background elements, and then we can customize the background elements so it can adapt to different environments, whether we be in the forest or, maybe it's a giant tree. If it's in Slumberland, like in the video, it's a tower, et cetera, et cetera. But, we have him fly in, turn around. So when we had, we changed up the timing from the rough because Bosco sits there for a second, and we thought that was kind of lame, so we had him wag his tail, because again, he's a big puppy. And then again, we didn't want the driver to give him a whap on the head, so he just kind of like jumps on Bosco a little bit, and that makes Bosco open his mouth. So there we go. There is Bosco, our friendly transport dragon. And that's also how we are doing some of the animations. We have lots and lots of examples of stuff like this. I'll gladly show more in the future, but I don't want this video to get too long. But I hope you enjoyed this look in at our animation process and what we were thinking when we made some of these characters. So, tell us what you think. We're in the final week, so please spread the word. Let people know what you love about the Little Nemo game, Little Nemo and the Nightmare Fiends. And, thank you for believing in us. We're almost there, everybody. Have a good one.